Hey everyone, so today we are pruning our Limelight Standard hydrangeas. Now the type of pruning I'm doing here today only applies to paniculata hydrangeas because they're going to grow back on new growth regardless of pretty much how you prune them. So the first thing I'm doing, because this is a standard hydrangea and it's not in the ground, you want to have a better shape or form because this is a tree hydrangea. So you want it to be a tree form rather than just letting it grow up from the ground. And I'm trying to move out of the way here because this is this one completely grew out of control. We have a situation here where the sun hits in all types of directions here, so it tends to want to grow whichever way it wants to. But we're going to give this one a nice pruning because it's got some thicker branches now that we can work with this year as opposed to the last couple of years when it was fairly new and you know, some of the branches were kind of smaller in diameter than they are now. So we're going to go ahead and first of all start with what I was already doing, is pruning out any of the winter damaged stems or any of the stems that have broken or that are basically just not producing anymore, anything that's already dead. And as you can see here in the center, I've got a bunch of dead wood here that I'm just gonna go ahead and prune back that didn't perform last year or do anything. So I'm gonna continue along and just prune out all the spindly stuff now from the top here, so I have a better idea of what I'm looking at with the thicker branches here after I get all the dead and damaged stuff in here. All right, so I've got the majority of the dead stuff or the damaged stuff, anything that was broken in there. So all I'm gonna do now is go around and basically just find the more of the flimsy type branches that are on here that I know are not gonna be able to support itself through the growing season, and just leave the thicker branches so I have a better idea again of what I'm looking at. So that's all we're gonna do, is just go around and prune off some of the more flimsy stuff. As you can see, a lot of these smaller blooms that were on here are very flimsy branches, so we're just gonna get rid of that stuff and keep the thicker part, and then we'll talk a little bit about the forming of the tree. All right, so as I'm pruning along here, the one thing you want to do is take a step back a little bit and just look at what you're doing before you continue any further, and it will give you a better idea, like I said, of what you're looking at and how you want to form this. But just pruning out those flimsier branches, those thinner branches, you can already see some type of shape forming. You can see it back here definitely, but as I continue to go along, I mean, that's one thing you got to do, is just take a step back and look at what you're doing. I think one of the most challenging things about pruning hydrangeas is the fear of messing it up, and you really can't do that with paniculata hydrangeas. They're gonna grow back exceptionally well in a tree form. Again, like I said, that's the one thing you just want to pay attention to rather than the hydrangeas that are in the ground, is making sure that you are keeping that nice shape and form, and taking a step back and looking at what you're doing every once in a while so you know exactly what you're working with. And then, you know, just kind of gather an idea of how these blooms are actually going to shape and form. But again, the biggest fear is pruning these guys thinking you're gonna mess something up, and just have fun with it. I think that's the biggest thing when you're especially growing hydrangeas, is just really having fun with what you have in the garden and enjoying the process, because these hydrangeas are definitely gonna reward you if you prune them the right way. So again, we're just gonna continue along and getting rid of all this flimsy stuff, and we'll come back in a second here just to show you what else we're gonna do once all this stuff is gone. All right, so once you have a shape with your hydrangea and you want to prune it back down, your main branches, you want to find a set of nodes here where the new growth is going to come out from, and you want to prune about a ½ inch to an inch above that node, just like that. And that's what you're going to want to see when you prune your hydrangea branches, is you want to see those nodes and then a little bit of growth here on top where there's about a ½ inch to an inch growing. All right, so now that I've taken off all that loose and thinner growth on top there, what we have now is kind of this weird shaped ball of branches, basically just pretty much going everywhere. So the next thing you want to do is you want to start with the bottom. So remember to keep that ball or tree form when you're pruning your hydrangea. So what we want to do is with the lower branches, because a tree is less dense on the bottom than it is on top, we want to leave the top ones a little bit longer. So on the bottom here, you want to keep these fairly short. And when I say fairly short, is you want that growth on the bottom to kind of form that tapered look on the bottom when you have a tree, and have all these shoots that are growing is going straight up. That is the goal, and that is the intent with the standard hydrangea. So once you have your shorter branches on the bottom here pruned the way you want to have them pruned, is just start working your way up top and leave the top ones a little bit better. Now, the other thing you want to do is when you're pruning up top here, you want to look at any branches that are growing inboard. So this one, I know it's pretty big, but I don't want that one to grow inboard. So I'm going to prune it right about here because it has some buds that are going to shoot out this way. This one right here is crossing as well, so I want to get rid of that. This is growing in, so I want to get rid of that. And this one's growing straight up. We might leave that one because it's going to come out and up this way. This one's a straight branch going forward. This one's already growing towards the outside. You have some over here that's growing inboard. I want to get rid of that. This is growing inboard as well. And then the rest of the branches here are pretty much growing towards the outside. Some that I left that do have some buds that may come out to the outside, but we want, just like a rose, when you have that lateral growth, you want the buds to come up straight up rather than crossing this way or going straight out where you have that flopping. And then unfortunately with these standard hydrangeas, you're always gonna get some flopping because some of that new growth is not gonna grow as thick as the old growth or be supported by some of these branches. So you're always gonna get some flopping. And later in the season, we'll talk about how to prevent that flopping, what we're gonna do to get those blooms and those branches to stay completely straight up, so we have a nice, beautiful looking tree. This is the third year now that we have this hydrangea and that we're actually pruning it, because the first year we didn't even touch it. That's how we got it. But this is the third year pruning it, and these branches have gotten very, very thick, a lot thicker than when we first got it. These were not, of course, these standard hydrangeas are grafted onto a rootstock, so this is not the way a limelight hydrangea actually grows. But the rootstock was actually much thinner than this, so it's getting a bit thicker here. It's getting some more girth at the bottom here, and as you can see, the root ball here is a lot more thicker. You have a lot more growth, but these branches here that are getting a lot thicker are gonna be able to support those blooms throughout this season. All right, so as I'm coming to the end of this video, I did want to talk about these hydrangeas for a minute because we have 3 of these and they're growing in different areas of the garden. Some of them get some part sun. They still bloom, they still do extremely well, but the way that they're placed in the garden has them tend to want to grow a certain way or shape because of the way the sunlight hits it. Now, this one is one of the much more challenging hydrangeas we had to prune here in the garden. I have 2 other ones that are going to be much easier, and those of you that are in the full sun area are going to have a much easier time pruning these hydrangeas because you're going to have those branches that are going to grow pretty much straight up, and it's going to be an easier time to actually pay attention to what's actually growing and what you're going to want to prune out. As you can see, this one had a lot of branches that are crossing that I needed to prune because the hydrangea tends to want to grow one way or another, so it's a little bit more difficult to figure out which branches I want to keep or which ones I don't. The other 2 look extremely great. They're going to be easier to prune, and I just wanted to do this one because I wanted to show you guys how much easier it is to prune these hydrangeas without actually going into it thinking it's going to be a tough job or it's going to be complicated to do it, because again, these limelight hydrangeas are some of the easiest hydrangeas you can prune in the garden, and they're going to definitely reward you again, like I said, once that seasonal bloom comes into play. But again, that's going to do it for the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions on hydrangeas, whether it's macrophylla, paniculata hydrangeas, or even arborescent hydrangeas, go ahead and drop a comment down below. We'll be more than happy to answer those questions the best that we can. But that's going to do it, and we'll see you guys in the next video.